What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. You guys, Derek and Cody, with you as always. And guys, we're continuing our series here, and this time we are discussing Colts free agent safety Julian Blackman. Blackman, who just came off of a career year stat wise, had a injury at the end of the year, which kept him out of the last two or three remaining games, and his presence was definitely missed. Cody, I mean, why don't you go ahead and give your thoughts on Julian Blackman and what he means to the Indianapolis Colts?
Yeah, well, first off, it did a great job in 2023 after switching positions. If you remember, switch from free safety to strong safety. And, again, a lot of inconsistency at the other safety spot pretty much all year. But Julian Blackman was such a model of consistency when he did play. And obviously, a bummer that he got hurt and missed the last couple of weeks of the season. But when he was on the field, Derek, like you talked about, a career year for him. In a lot of ways. In snaps, he had the most snaps of his NFL career, 88 tackles, the most tackles in his career, and the most interceptions in his career. He led the Colts with 4 interceptions. And so for all those different reasons, Julian Blackman was such a great rebound story. He's a guy that's dealt with some injuries. He's dealt with some inconsistencies at times. Derek, we hadn't really seen this version of Julian Blackman really since his rookie season. His 2020 season where, he came in and was just a revelation for the Colts in a lot of ways, right? Remember, he had multiple big plays right off the bat to start the season for the Colts and secured a couple games in that season. And then this year we saw more of that Julian Blackman that we knew was still there. He had multiple games where, he won the game for the Colts. I mean, you think about that Patriots game, he had that game-stealing interception. You think about the Pittsburgh game. He really secured that game with that interception. So he had a lot of timely turnovers, which obviously for defense that is predicated on that in a lot of ways, that was huge for them to get that type of production from Julian Blackman. And so overall, with how inconsistent and how young this safety room was, Julian Blackman, similar to the guy we just talked about, Kenny Moore, was that, veteran and stable presence in that room. And I think it was so valuable to the Colts, to Gus Bradley, to all of the coaching staff and the players in what he did. And so definitely think he earned himself some sort of contract extension with the Colts because you look outside of Julian Blackman at the safety room, Derek, and right now you don't have a clear answer on really a couple of other young guys with this group. So I think keeping a guy can play at a high level is very critical for the Colts.
Yeah, so I think that I'll just get this argument out of the way for me. I think that, and I am in no way, shape, or form saying that Julian Blackman should not stay with Indianapolis. I mean, in retrospect, I think that there are plenty of reasons to keep Julian Blackman around. I would just suggest that if you feel that Julian Blackman is asking for too much, I will say, Cody, I think that for this free agency class from the safety group, it's very deep. Very, very deep. There is a lot of safeties that are going to be on the free agent market this free agency period. So if you felt the need to try to replace Julian Blackman with somebody different, then I feel that you could do that because, like I said, there's going to be a lot of guys and a lot of them, they play in the same kind of system as what Julian Blackman has. But at the same time, I mean, you look at it and say Julian Blackman has almost as much production as any of the best ones that are going to be on the free agency market. And he's about probably one of the youngest ones. He's only 25. He's going to be 26 this next year, Cody, which is crazy because, again, he hasn't even hit his stride yet, which is crazy to think about. And like you said, when it comes to him, when he is on the field, he has just been an absolute beast. And the great thing about it too, Cody, is this is a guy that you drafted as a free safety, and then this last year asked him to move positions to be a strong safety, And then so you can work some things around with your free safety position. And yet here we are now. Julian Blackman not only did well at the position, but had a career year stat wise moving to that position. And I think it just speaks to the versatility of a Julian Blackman where he can play either free safety or strong safety, play in any way that you see fit. He can be the guy that's the free roamer. He can be the guy that can play up in the box and come up and hit people. He can play all of these different things as a safety. And there's not a lot of safeties that you say can do that. So for him to be that kind of guy with that kind of skill set, Cody, I think gives you the advantage here that you can move this guy around anywhere that you want to, and he's able to do it. And I think that's so underrated that a lot of Colts fans just don't quite understand.
Yeah. Another thing, Derek, that I don't think we've talked about much was Julian Blackman. If you remember in 2022, when there were some things happening and Kenny Moore was dealing with some injuries, he played some slot as well. So like this dude is so versatile. He can play free, he can play strong, he can play slot, he can do a little bit of everything. He has that ability physically and also just mentally, where he can play all these different positions, and he's played them at pretty high levels. So I think you mentioned, that the age going to be only 26 this coming year. The age, the versatility, really the only potential hesitation is obviously the injuries. He's had now multiple years where he has not finished all of the season. I don't think he's ever really finished all the season, if my memory serves correct. Yeah. So this last year, he was tied for a career high in games played with 15, missed the last two of the season. And so you do wonder about, you can't fully, potentially trust Julian Blackman to play all 17 games in a season. Now, again, I know that's kind of with the attrition of the NFL. That's going to happen to everybody. But again, that's probably the biggest hesitation with re-signing Julian Blackman is kind of the injury history. He's had multiple times where he's dealt with certain injuries that's kept him off the field for decent amount of periods. And so, but overall, I mean, you look at it, really the 1 year he had in 2021 was the one where he didn't play more than 14 games. So again, you look at that, you say, okay, he typically misses 2 to 3 games per season. Can you live with that? Can you be okay with that potentially happening? That's kind of the thing the Colts have to weigh there with Julian Blackman, because when he's on the field, he's obviously great. But if he's not on the field, I mean, he's not available. Are you willing, like you said, to pay him that amount of money? Or is there another safety out there that's potentially a little bit more durable that you're like, we want to trust this guy's going to be on the field 99% of the time? So that's kind of the thing the Colts got to weigh there.
No doubt about it that the injury history definitely is a slight bit of a concern. And I mean, I can look at a lot of these different safeties who are, around the same age as Julian Blackman is. I mean, remember the first season when he missed those 2 games, he didn't get to start right away because he was just coming off of that ACL injury. So he had to miss the first 2, still try to get prepared. And then, like you said, 2020 or 2021, he had that really bad year where, he just wasn't available. 2022, played in 14 games, missed a couple, but he played for the majority of it. And then, like you said, this year, never had an injury problem up until that one at the very end of the season. But I mean, I just look at some of these safeties that are also going to be on this free agent market, and, guys that are going to be young and guys that, you could try to replace Julian Blackman with. And I mean, just looking at these guys, I mean, outside of maybe 1 or 2 guys, there's been very few of them that haven't, played all of their games, right? Like a bunch of guys have had one season where they missed a really big chunk of their games or missed a few in this season, So like, yeah, injuries are just gonna happen with a lot of these guys. You just never know when it comes to that sort of thing. But again, it's like you said, can you live with the can you live with the missing 3 games a year sort of thing, 2 or 3 games sort of thing. So if you can live with that, Julian Blackman's numbers are better than most when it comes to this free agent market. So, I mean, I'm not entirely worried about, obviously we know when Blackman is out there and he is as productive as just about any other safety out there. So, I mean, it just depends on how you feel about the whole situation. Now, again, we talk about it every single time, Cody. How do you feel about the actual contract in total? What do you feel he's actually going to get? I'm actually going to go ahead and look it up on best safety contracts. But I will say this from a average contract of the free agents that are going to be going into free agency this year, some of the highest ones. I mean, Buda Baker is making 14.5 million a year. Micah Hyde's getting almost 10, and Chauncey Gardner Johnson's getting 6.5. I have a feeling Chauncey Gardner Johnson might end up getting closer to 10 just because of how young he is and how great of a player he's proven to be. But I mean, that'll be interesting to see how much Blackman actually acquires.
Yeah, I can't think it's crazy because of some of the injuries. I just can't think it's like this
Yeah.
absolutely astronomical number. The injuries do make it just a little bit cloudy because clean bill of health, no doubt. He's playing like one of the better safeties in the NFL. But again, that is a factor. And so you do wonder how much does that contribute. But yeah, I don't know, man. That's a great one. That's one that I can't really get a gauge on because he's out of the players I would say that we're going to be looking at with the top free agents. He's the guy that's the hardest to kind of figure out, I guess. And also switching positions, how much the difference is it?
No doubt he gets more than Malik Hooker, who's getting $7 million a year. I could see a situation where he's making around $8 to $9 million a year because, I mean, I just look at the guys who are making around $10 million. Justin Reed for Kansas City, I could see why. Amani Hooker, I could kind of see it. But like Micah Hyde is making almost $10 million. And think of the injury history on that dude. That injury history sheet is long. And so, I mean, he's talking about that, right? I mean, Tyrann Mathieu making $9 million a year. Like, you kidding me? I mean, that seems about right, for around $8-9 million a year. I mean, I think we'd be getting lucky if we got Julian Blackman for $8 million because, I mean, I think he's better than Tracy Walker of the Detroit Lions. And I mean, I think he's right up there with Rayshawn Jenkins and Jacksonville. So, I mean, 8 to 9 million, I think, is probably a good parameter to think about for Julian Blackman.
Yep, we'll see how it shakes out, man. Hopefully they bring him back, and hopefully he's a part of the franchise for a while because we love him when he's here and we love him when he's playing. And so hopefully, if they do elect to re-sign him, he can stay healthy and can continue to be that player we know he is. Really excited to see kind of how that contract plays out. But hopefully he's an Indianapolis Colt when it's all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Let us know your thoughts on Blackman and what you think the Indianapolis Colts should do there. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.